Hey friends, it's Justin and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going bold and playing with the Build a Garden series by Altenew to make this stunning floral creation. All products being used in today's video and your special promo are linked down below for your shopping convenience. For today's card, we are going to be playing around with the Vintage Motif Stencil, the Nested Serene Archways, the Build a Garden Leaning Lily collection that includes the die, stamp set, and stencil. And lastly, we're going to be pulling in the Brushed Rose Metallic Cardstock. And I have a special offer code to share with you today. If you make a purchase of $99 or more, you can use code JustinRose to get this Brushed Rose Metallic Cardstock for free with your purchase. Now, this promotion does expire July 1st at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time, so make sure to take that into account before you get your shop on. Now let's start with our card. Using that Leaning Lily stamp set, we are going to stamp out our main lily onto some blending cardstock. So I'm going to position this into my Misty, and then we're going to stamp it down with our Misty door. So I'm going to pick that stamp up, and then I'm going to use kind of a less traditional color, and I'm going to stamp this with Moon Rock ink. This is a great warm gray color, and one of my tips is I often like to stamp my images in a non-black color, but that's still a neutral like a gray would be. And this is going to make our lines for our lily just a little bit softer. You could even go in with a lighter gray if you wanted to see less of that line, or even use a brown as well. Once I'm satisfied with the impression for my lily, we're going to use these coordinating leaning lily stencils that are included in the Build a Garden kit to start blending out everything with our flower. So this does come with four different stencils, as you can see, and they're numbered from 1 to 4, and each stencil has different sections that you're going to be able to lay on top of the lily to blend it up. So you kind of just kind of eyeball where it fits and then put it into position, and then I usually recommend taking a little bit of low-tack tape to put the stencil into place and also use it to mask off areas of your paper that you don't want to get your inks into. Now I'm going to start with 3 pink colors. We're going to use Blush Rose, and then from a different collection we're going to use Coral Bliss and Pink Pearl. And I am going to use a mini blending brush. Also, I didn't mention it in the beginning, but with this kit you do get 1 mini blending brush for free, so make sure to take advantage of that with this kit. Now, using our first color of that Blush Rose, I am going to blend from the center of the flower out, and then we're going to go in with a secondary color of Coral Bliss. Now, I am mixing color families because I didn't really find colors that I had on hand that in the significant family that we'd be using, I kind of felt that I wasn't going to get the end result. But by mixing the family with the Dusty Rose, with this Coral Bliss and Pink Pearl, I was getting that sort of pinkish peaches color that I was going for. Now, another thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm not going to be walking through each of the stencils. I just thought it was a little bit more on the tedious side. So you will see me jump ahead in a second, and we're going to start to focus on the stamen and the stems of each of the flowers. So with our florals into place, I'm going to then reposition the stencil. And as you can see, there is a second part of the stencil that I'm just going to kind of move a little bit north, and then I am going to use my low tack adhesive to once again, once the stencil is nice and positioned, get this stencil nicely put into place so it won't shift around on me. Now, these stencils do have some delicate portions of areas that are going to be sort of thin lines that aren't really anchored super well to keep them stable. So what you're going to want to do is when you're blending them, be very gentle with your movements and even use your fingers to try and hold them down into place to minimize those parts moving and getting those blurry lines. So here I'm just sort of repeating the process, going in with that blush rose color and then moving on to that coral bliss. And I'm really loving how these three colors are working together to blend out these really pretty lily colors. I'm just really enjoying how beautiful this is turning out. And I always love how Altenew's Build a Garden series really allows for fantastic florals and makes it easy for us to achieve fantastic results. This pink pearl is working as a fantastic highlight color for these leaves. It's such a light sort of coral color. I'm just adoring how it's turning out. So once I'm done with that pink pearl, I'm going to move on to blending up those stems and stamen like I had mentioned earlier. So I'm using some Shadow Creek Fresh Dye ink with the stems, and then I'm going to be using some Grass Field as well to blend up as sort of a mid-tone-ish. And I'm still using a mini blending brush, but I am using a mini blending brush that's designated for my green inks. So I kind of clean it off. You can see a little bit of my craft towel off camera that I cleaned the brush a little bit because I'm going from dark to light. And now with my last color for our stems, we're going to use some Firefly ink. And so I'm just going to use that Firefly as sort of a highlight color, use it to sort of blend all of our colors together, and then move on to using Amber Blaze for the stamen of the flower. Now, the Amber Blaze is a really pretty orange color, and I do have a different mini blending brush designated for that as well. And here you can see when I peel back my stencil, we are almost completed, but we just have to reposition it one last time to do some of the smaller stems that are part of this image. So I will position my stencil into place and then use my tape once again to position my stencil and secure it. Now that our image is pretty close to being fully blended up, it is more important than ever to make sure that if there's an area of this paper you want masked off, to do it so you don't accidentally misblend your colors into one another. We spent all this time blending this up. We might as well make sure it turns out the way we want with minor blemishes. So with my stems all fully blended with my colors, I'm going to peel back my final stencil, and I am just loving how this has turned out. I think this is a beautiful color for these lilies. I think a little bit non-traditional as well, and I think that makes it super fun. Now I'm putting my image back into my Misty, and we're going to be using the sentiment that says sending comfort and calm. And because I'm not using this entire panel for my card, I'm trying to just save on cardstock and then use what's remaining in the white space to stamp out this sentiment. Once I have my sentiment positioned in a way that it's not going to interfere with the lily image that we've prepared, I'm going to close the door on my Misty, pick up the sentiment, and use some Raspberry Sunset ink to stamp onto my paper. So once the ink is applied to the stamp, of course, as we usually would, we will go and close our Misty door, add a little bit of pressure to get it nice and impressed, and here we have our sentiment that's going to coordinate with our card so well. Now, the Leaning Lily Build a Garden bundle does come with coordinating dies for both the lily itself and the larger sentiments, and I am going to be using those to cut out my images and sentiment just to make sure everything is nice and cleanly cut. One of my favorite things about die sets is when they also include dies for the sentiments, so this is just a total added bonus that there's going to be some sentiment die cuts to really get those clean cuts around those words. Now I'm going to pull in some purple cardstock so we can blend with the vintage Motif stencil. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stencil and then put the paper on the back of it. Once again, I will be pulling in some low tack adhesive so that we'll be able to get this nicely secured to the stencil once I've positioned it appropriately. So I'm just going to use it on the two ends, the left and the right side. And I'm using kind of a little bit of a larger piece, maybe about 2.5 inches. And I feel that this does a good job securing that paper to the stencil. Now, for our ink blending, I'm going to be pulling in some Andromeda ink, and it's this really dark, beautiful purple color. And we're going to just use a blending brush and go directly over the stencil onto our purple cardstock. I'm just going to blend as best as I can, sort of around the edges. I'm not worried about the center of the card because that will be covered up. And then once I'm happy with my blending, I'm going to remove the stencil and show you how beautiful this turns out. Now, being transparent, this does give me a little bit of Haunted Mansion vibes. Shout out to my Disney adults out there. And I'm going to also remove the tape very carefully so that I can do a little bit of splattering on this panel as well. I've watered down some excess Andromeda ink, and I'm picking it up with a clean watercolor brush to then splatter onto the background just to add a little bit of extra detail and interest to the panel. Now, once I'm happy with the splattering and everything is dried, I do want to give you a little bit of a closer look as to what that panel looks like. And I realize I want to do a little bit of distressing along the edges. So I'm going to take the residual ink on my purple blending brush and then use that residual Andromeda ink just to sort of darken up the edges of the panel to make them just a little bit darker, give them a little bit of a variation of color. And now with that applied ink, I really like how this has turned out, and we can get into the next part of our card. Now, I've got some of that brushed rose metallic cardstock along with a light orange cardstock as well, and we're going to use the nested Serene Archways to go ahead and die cut out a couple shapes for our card. Using the largest of the archways, I am going to die cut that from the brushed rose metallic cardstock, and then using the second largest, I am going to die cut from this light orange cardstock from my stash as well. I will die cut these off of camera, and then we're going to do a little bit of ink blending onto that light orange archway. And we're going to use some raspberry sunset ink to blend the edges of this panel. And what I love about this color combination of the raspberry sunset on this light orange cardstock is that you're almost getting a peach pit coloring. You know how peach pits are very earthy, but they have a little bit of a red and they've got a little bit of a color of peach attached to them. I'm very much getting that by applying this raspberry sunset to this light orange cardstock, and I am so adoring how this is turning out. I think that it's really bold to blend a super dark ink on top of a light cardstock, and this is definitely an instance where it's a total win. Now with our blending completed, we can now begin some assembly. So we're going to use our liquid adhesive to apply onto the back of our smallest blended archway and then adhere it directly on top of our brushed rose metallic archway. Now I do sort of rub a little bit of the adhesive just to sort of make it less of an amount in quantity so that it's not going to smush when I apply pressure. I get it all lined up with our metallic brushed rose archway, and then we can use some liquid adhesive on the back of this unit to adhere it directly to our card panel. And like I said, I wasn't worried about blending the center of that panel because we're going to be able to sort of cover it up with that archway. Now, using 3mm foam strips, I am applying them to the back of our leaning lily image, and this is going to give us some really nice dimension once we get this all added to our card. So once I remove the backing of all of my foam tape, I'm going to position our leaning lily so it's kind of hugging the right side of our archway unit, and once it's positioned appropriately, I can then move on to putting our little sentiment banner down. And I did use a combination of liquid adhesive and foam tape so that our sentiment banner is the same dimension on the card that the lily unit is as well. So I use my fingers, get everything with that nicely put into place, and then I'm going to do some pearl dot embellishments in Ivory just to add a little bit of extra sparkle to the card. Now, originally I wasn't thinking of using an ivory sort of embellishment, but I thought that it worked really nicely pulling in the whites of the paper for the sentiment and the lily, and I love how these little embellishments look in the end. With all of our embellishments put into place, I'm going to put our card onto an A2 size card base. I'm using liquid adhesive on the back of the panel and then just trying to make sure that I get enough coverage that it's going to fit nice and securely onto my prepared A2 card base. So I'll get that all lined up with my fingers, and once everything with that is lined up, we are going to be entirely done with today's card. I just love how this turned out. That brushed rose metallic cardstock gives the perfect shine and it complements our leaning lily image so very much. Now, don't forget, you can also snag that free pack of brushed rose metallic cardstock by using code JustinRose on Altenew.com with your purchase of $99 or more. That promo code does expire on July 1st, 2026 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so very much for stopping by my channel today for some bold and floral inspiration using the Altenew Build a Garden series. I hope that you learned some fun tips and tricks to help make your next card really pop. Now don't forget to like and subscribe and follow me on all socials at Justin Hope by Justin for even more crafting inspiration. Thanks again for stopping by and happy crafting, everyone. Goodbye.